Welcome to Ryan's Running Reviews in partnership with Roadrunner Sports, and today we're taking a look at the brand new Adidas Supernova Prima. What's wrong with it? So some of you are probably wondering, Ryan, how many different shoes are in the Supernova series? And to answer that question, there are 4 different options. We have the Supernova Stride. I don't have that shoe with me, but that's their budget version. It only has Dream Strike in the forefoot. The rest of the midsole is going to be an EVA foam. Then we have the Supernova Rise, the shoe we have here in the corner. This is their more traditional neutral daily trainer. Then we have the Supernova Solution. This is basically very similar to the Rise, but it's the stability version. A few more stability elements on the medial side to keep your foot from rolling inwards. And then finally, we have the Supernova Prima, the shoe we're taking a look at today, which is the biggest and baddest shoe out of all of them. It has the most amount of stack height and will deliver the most amount of cushioning. Adidas also mentioned that on top of the Prima being designed for those that want more stack height, it's also geared towards those higher cadence runners with a mid to forefoot strike, as the Prima has an 8mm drop compared to the 10mm drop we see on both the Solution and the Rise. So how much thicker is the Prima compared to the 2 options behind me? Well, we have an additional 2mm in the heel and 4 more in the forefoot, bringing us to 38mm in the heel and 30 in the forefoot for that lower 8mm drop, again compared to the 10mm drop we see on the Rise and the Solution. The Prima is the more expensive shoe, about 30 bucks more, coming in at $170. It's also going to be slightly heavier compared to its smaller neutral counterpart, the Supernova Rise, which weighs 9.7, while the Prima is 10.3. This isn't necessarily a heavy shoe or a light shoe. I'd say it's pretty average or about par for the course for its category. Moving on to the upper, Adidas made one big change here from the rest of the Supernova series, which I am very happy to see. And that big change is the tongue. It's going to be much thinner and has some foam blocks down the center to give you lace pressure protection. It's also a gusseted tongue, so it has a rather consistent feel to it, which was not the case for me on both the Rise and the Solution, as those did not have gusseted tongues, and the edges of those tongues were a bit uncomfortable when you first got into the shoe. You kind of had to get them situated every time you put the shoe on. But for this here on the Prima, very consistent. I really do enjoy how the tongue kind of lays across your foot, and I didn't have any major issues. The upper itself is a very traditional engineered mesh with average breathability, and I found the fit to be true to size. And then if we move towards the back of the shoe, you have tons of padding in the ankle and Achilles section. I found this to be quite comfortable, and the heel counter itself is quite stiff and rigid, which I do think helps with the lockdown. I did find the fit to be kind of spot on, didn't have any heel lift or anything like that, and felt very connected to this shoe. I think Adidas has it dialed in just right for the upper here. And then if we talk about the midsole, it does have a couple of tricks up its sleeve. It's mostly Dream Strike plus a PIBA blended foam. Most of the time PIBA foams are seen on top tier Super Race Day shoes, so Adidas kind of created a different formulation of it to put on its Supernova series. And then underneath that really soft Dream Strike Plus, we have these large gray foam support rods that run the entire length of the shoe. Now this gray foam is going to be a bit more dense and firm, which adds some stability and rigidity to the midsole itself. And I will say, after kind of doing the bend test and using these, it does help kind of give some more structure to the midsole. And as another kind of an interesting side note, the back portion of the outsole does not have rubber coverage. So you can see the dark gray area, that's all rubber, and then these light gray foam rods is actually exposed foam, which is kind of an interesting touch. I'm not sure why they just didn't cover the entire outsole in rubber. For this being a highly cushioned neutral daily trainer, it's actually fairly stable, and I think that's again in part to those foam support rods that sit underneath. Now I do wish Dream Strike Plus was a bit springier or bouncier. It's not the most lively PIBA foam I've ever used, but I think it delivers a really well cushioned experience underfoot, which I did enjoy. The other thing I really liked about the Prima is the fact that you have about 4 more millimeters of stack height in the forefoot. That was one of my criticisms of the Rise. It didn't feel as great towards the front of the shoe, and I think that's been completely fixed here, or at least changed in the Prima version, as you just have even more stack height in both the heel and forefoot sections. In my opinion, the Rise falls into the do-it-all daily trainer category. I found it to be quite versatile. I do realize it's half an ounce more compared to the Rise. However, for me, that's completely worth it, mainly because the tongue is just so much better. You have additional cushioning in the midsole, especially in the forefoot, and the midsole itself is going to be a bit more rigid, which helps with the stability and helps you take advantage of the rocker geometry, which I think is more aggressive in the Prima as well. The only minor complaint is, like I touched on before, I do wish Dream Strike Plus was a bit more bouncy. I do think that the gray foam rods underneath do restrict it just a bit, but I think it delivers a very well cushioned and comfortable experience overall. Well, that concludes the review. Let me know in the comments which Adidas Supernova shoe you would go with. Personally, I'm going with the Prima. I would love to hear from you. I'm Ryan from Ryan's Running Reviews, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks.